Okay, first of all, welcome and thank you all for attending this webinar today. It's great to see we've got over 100 attendees signed up, so thank you all for that. We really look forward to the next 45 minutes or so taking you through mobile GRC management. So as we can see, we are presenting today in conjunction with Corporate Integrity, or specifically Michael Rasmussen, who really is the founder of GRC in many ways, or at least the terminology. So he'll be talking through how we can achieve flexibility and efficiency through mobile audits and assessments. So I'll pass over to Michael now, who will now present the solution.
Welcome, and it is a pleasure to be here today. I'm looking forward to spending this next hour with everybody talking about one of my favorite subjects, governance, risk management, and compliance. And to tie that together with one of the hottest trends out there in business technology, the use of mobility to manage governance, risk management, and assessments, and audits, and compliance initiatives. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the pressure organizations are under that drives them towards mobility solutions for GRC. I'll paint a little bit of a broader picture of the range of applications that could be available on GRC as vendors start, vendors like our host today, CMO Compliance, start implementing and deploying solutions. Some exist today, some are conceptual thoughts for tomorrow. And then we'll look at more about how mobile audits and assessments themselves can be delivered, and the value that can have towards organizations, which our host today is delivering an application in that area. So with no further ado, I don't think I spend a lot of time on.
Welcome to GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy. There are 2 other callers on the call.
Bearing down the organization. This might come from national, state, provincial laws and regulations. And as your organization goes global, the number of laws and regulations increases. I know that within the U.S. there's over 3,000 employment labor laws at the U.S. federal, state, and local jurisdiction level. There's over 4,000 new rules in the U.S. Unified Agenda. I was doing a GRC seminar training in Brazil, and a Brazilian bank had just gone through an exercise of documenting all the different regulatory requirements upon the bank across the organization. Now, any one regulation might have 100 requirements, might only have 5 requirements, but they went down to the requirement level and found that there's over 81,000 different requirements they documented upon the bank. Organizations have a lot of complexity, a lot of check boxes to check when it comes to laws, rules, regulations, requirements, and obligations, and so forth. But as you go global and you have global markets and jurisdictions, you have different laws in different countries. And how do you manage that? How do you manage risk and compliance? How do you conduct audits and assessments in countries that don't have a lot of infrastructure, such as internet or mobile infrastructure? It just becomes quite challenging to deliver audits and assessments in those environments. And mobility has a great application there. Outsourcing the extended enterprise. You know, how do you assure that your business partners, your vendors, suppliers, contractors, outsourcers, that they're in a state of compliance to your requirements, to the regulatory requirements that bear down upon your organization, and that filter down to them as well? How do you conduct audits and assessments of those third-party and vendor relationships? Then we have the complexity of mergers and acquisitions, and with each M&A activity, we have redundant set of GRC activities, processes, and policies that come in, bearing down upon the organization. So the point here is that organizations are under a lot of stress, a lot of regulatory risk stress, a lot of obligations, a lot of stress from the dynamic nature of business and the complexity of business. But let's focus on the dynamic nature of business. Business is changing minute by minute, second by second. You have found it of value to spend this hour listening to this webinar on mobility for GRC. When you go back to your business at the end of this hour, business has changed. New employees have come in the organization, they've changed roles in the organization, and there might be issues in inherited rights and segregation of duties, not understanding policies. Some employees have left the organization. They've been terminated, whether it's voluntarily or, you know, it's something that the organization took initiative on because there's some type of wrongdoing. In this hour, maybe your IT systems have changed. New vulnerabilities have been discovered. There there might have been health and safety conditions that have arisen. Something spilled in the plant floor. There's incidents and investigations, fraud. The regulatory requirements have changed. Your processes have changed. The economic environment's changed. The dynamic nature of business combined with this complexity of business means that organizations have to rethink how they're approaching governance, risk management, and compliance. So we have risk and compliance as these fragmented silos of mainly, done in documents such as spreadsheets and word processing documents. This is a recipe for disaster. We have poor visibility across the organization because we have no integrated architecture to bring all these documents together and report on them. I can think of one financial services organization I've been working with in an RFP right now for software, and their big issue is they have got tons. I mean, we're talking hundreds of spreadsheets for different risk and compliance purposes, and to report and manage these spreadsheets, it requires a significant amount of time and investment just to gather that information and report on it in the existing period. They don't even have the resources to report and trend things, one period after another period, year after year, quarter after quarter. It's too much because they're trapped in documents and spreadsheets. That's why organizations need to look at GRC software to make things more efficient. On top of that, when you're using things like spreadsheets for assessments or word processing documents, there's something wrong because there's no audit trail. You can't go back and state that that person was the person that answered that assessment or conducted that audit, and this is what they found on that date and time, and if things were changed, here's the audit trail and record of what was changed, when it was changed, who changed it. Spreadsheets and word processing documents don't have that. They don't stand up in court. You can't legally defend the organization with them because they don't have an audit trail. You can't prove that somebody didn't come back later and change that document, that spreadsheet or that word processing document. You can't come back and show that somebody didn't change that and modify it to get themselves out of trouble, to paint a prettier, rosier picture for the organization. They have no audit trail. There's no what we call non-repudiation. We can't go back and validate who did it and what did they enter originally, and because it's open for change. And so this document-centric approach for risk and compliance just fails out of the gates. So we need to look to software to be able to manage risk and compliance across all these silos and to integrate this information to provide that audit trail of who entered and did that assessment on what date and time, and if it was changed, who changed it, when did they change it, why did they change it. That's the value of software, is to provide that audit trail, but also to enable that reporting piece. Now, software itself is great, but some of the value of a spreadsheet or a word processing document is the ease to port it around, to take it into areas of the business where I might not have internet access, whether it's at a business partner or maybe it's a retail store. I don't even know if I have good phone coverage. I could use that to conduct assessments. So then enters mobility. We could use the new era of mobility and GRC applications to be able to do audits and assessments when needed, wherever needed, in a very flexible, convenient way. But when we manage risk and compliance in these different little silos that don't talk to each other and they're very document-centric approaches, we can't get that visibility. And we have a lot of inefficiency, redundancy, gaps. I've talked to the line of business in several organizations when they were talking about GRC strategies. And the line of business is screaming. They're saying enough is enough. This week it's a Sarbanes-Oxley assessment. Next week it's an operational risk assessment. The week after that it's a business continuity assessment. And they're coming in different spreadsheets and formats. And the line of business is saying, wait a second, half these questions in this operational risk assessment are the same questions I answered last week in that business continuity assessment. It doesn't make sense. There's a lot of redundancy and inefficiency and overlap in these document-centric approaches that we need to get by. There's overwhelming complexity because there's so many ways of doing risk and compliance, so many different types of assessments and policies and processes that the business is complex. And as I already mentioned, business is dynamic. It's changing minute by minute, second by second. And organizations need agile, flexible ways, such as through mobile GRC, to be able to address that complexity and bring everything together and be able to see the big picture as business changes, so the business can be agile and not burdened by risk and compliance. But when we manage all this risk and compliance in these document ad hoc approaches, we have greater exposure and vulnerability to the organization because it does slow the business down and make it more complex. At the end of the day, if you have a document-centric approach to GRC, your GRC processes are not effective, they're not efficient, nor are they as agile as they could be with a GRC technology strategy, and now particularly one that supports mobility. And if you think about it, as I've already mentioned, in the organization, there's too many people sending too many messages in too many different ways. And I referenced this like in the assessment piece just a bit ago, where the line of business is screaming, saying, this week it's a SOX 404 assessment, next week it's an operational risk assessment, the week after that it's a business continuity assessment. And there's an assessment the following week and the week after that. The organization struggles because there's so many different assessments and processes and approaches burdening the business. And not just with assessments, but also policies. We have policies scattered on SharePoint sites, on file shares. Any manager can create a document and call it a policy and bring legal exposure upon the organization because it sets a duty of care and liability that the organization has to comply with. These scattered document-centric approaches are wrong. It's just the wrong approach in today's day and age of technology for managing governance, risk management, and compliance. And at the end of the day, up in the upper right, there's so many different formats and approaches and paper. How do we manage all this? How do we get all this together and make sense of it? When you have document-centric approaches, you can't. It takes a lot of time and effort. And just like that financial services example I mentioned, they might spend a lot of time being able to report on a specific assessment period, but they can't go out and report period over period because it just takes too much time because it's all trapped in documents. So this manual document-centric approach for GRC processes adds to the confusion and complexity of all the information in the organization. We end up with organizations that have this document-centric approach end up with excessive email trails. Workflow isn't this accountability tracking software type ability. With a document-centric approach, people typically fire off an email, and that's their workflow. And there's no task management, there's no follow-up, there's no way to find out what the status of that is. We have excessive email trails and documents, paper trails. We don't have the audit trail to understand who did what, when, how, why. There's limited reporting. Files and documents end up out of sync. We updated a new assessment and we sent it out there, but some people are using the old assessment because they saved that on their file share out there, or same thing with policies. We create a new policy and we try to distribute in the organization, and it's on all these different SharePoint sites and file shares. And when we revised that policy, well, it didn't get synced out there to several of these sites. We didn't know that they were out there, so some people are referring to the old policy. A lot of wasted resources and spending, poor visibility, business is overly complex, and at the end of the day, again, there's no accountability. So I painted the pretty picture of the Dante's Inferno, I call it, on the lower left, where we have this fragmented mess of wasted resources and inefficiency, wasted spending, the cracks and being slipping through, and people aren't seeing the big picture, to the more state of bliss on the upper right, and that's where organizations need to get to. And how do you get there? Well, it really involves having an integrated GRC process, information, and technology architecture that can bring about that state of bliss with a little halo, and you have effective oversight and a lot of organization, as you see in that picture on the right, and clear accountability and different roles in the organization working together, as compared to the scattered mess of things over on the left. And the point in today's webinar is that we've had GRC technology for 10 years. It's matured significantly over this past 10 years. In fact, I was the first to define a model of market back in February of 2002 when I was at Giga Information Group that was soon to be acquired by Forrester Research, that I modeled the market for technology and labeled it GRC. So the GRC technology market is just over 10 years old, as I created and defined it in February 2002. And it's changed a lot and has grown a lot. But one of those most interesting changes that I've seen in the last 18 months is the beginning of the embrace of mobility applications to help obtain that state of bliss in the upper right corner of effective oversight and the organization working together collaboratively on GRC, that mobility has a place there. So think about it. First off, let's start with a definition of GRC. There's only one definition of GRC that comes from an open vetted standard out there. You know, every vendor and solution provider can give you their definition of GRC. And in fact, that frustrates me. I was at a conference 2 years ago, and I did the keynote to open it. And a good friend of mine, Norman Marks, you know, so stayed there throughout the conference. And he said that by the end of the conference, he heard 20 different definitions of GRC. That's just wrong. There's only one definition of GRC. And that comes from the Open Compliance and Ethics Group, the GRC capability model. I'm not aware of any other published standard definition that has been vetted in a standard for GRC. GRC is the reliable achievement of objectives. It's there in your lower right corner. It's the reliable achievement of objectives, which is the governance piece of it, while addressing uncertainty, which is the risk management piece of it, and acting with integrity, which is the compliance piece of it. At the end of the day, business is going to drive down its road of opportunity, and it's got to navigate around obstacles as it tries to hit its objectives and strategy and performance goals. And the job of GRC is to enable the business to hit those objectives, the reliable achievement of objectives, while addressing uncertainty or the risk that might be there. You know, there's fog on the road. We don't know where the road is exactly. We need to slow down. Or maybe the road's clear and there's not much uncertainty, and we can speed up. And acting with integrity. There's compliance issues, you know. And to hit that objective, well, I could hit it very effectively and efficiently by committing, you know, this crime or violating this law or regulation. It might be off-label promotion of drugs in the pharmaceutical industry and encouraging sales reps to tell doctors that drugs can be used for purposes other than they've been approved for. It could be giving a bribe or some other type of corruption. You know, there's a lot of ways we can hit our objectives, but if we want to act with integrity, we need to make sure we stay on the road and that we don't end up in the ditch of noncompliance and violating legal boundaries and regulatory boundaries. So the role of GRC is that the fastest cars should have the best brakes. We should be able to allow the business to be able to drive down the road of opportunity as quickly as it can, but GRC is there to tell the business when to slow down because there's a sharp turn up ahead, or there's a pothole in the road, or some other obstacle. You know, the job of governance, risk management, and compliance is not to be the department of no. It's there to allow the organization to go as fast as it can, but safely, to control that speed of business so that it doesn't get itself in trouble. So the fastest cars should have the best brakes. And the role of technology enables us to have better brakes. That, you know, again, to use the document-centric approach, if we have our GRC processes scattered in Excel spreadsheets and Word documents across the business, we don't have very effective brakes. You know, sort of like the Freddie Flintstone from the cartoons. You know, we're using our feet to brake the organization, and it's not being very effective. It's taking too much time. You know, when we have technology, we have the ability to have good information to process that and to ensure that the organization has better brakes. And we embrace mobility, and we can communicate and conduct assessments where people are at, when they're at any time, and be able to gather that information back into the system. You know, that actually improves our brakes for the organization, gather information. So the evolution of technology. You go back 30, 40 years ago, it was the era of the mainframe. Then entered in the late 80s, early 90s, the client-server domain. I'm one of those youngins from the 80s. Well, I'm not really young anymore. I'm 42. But, you know, I cut my teeth in the beginning of the client-server era. You know, growing up, you know, I had the Commodore 64. My dad had the original IBM PC. I had an IBM PC Junior, and then I fell in love with a Macintosh. You know, but, you know, they had those PC days that continue on today, but, you know, have been enhanced by other technologies. The client-server world. My first big project in the IT world was back in 1993, and I was tasked with moving from a System 36 well, sort of IBM's lower mainframe, mid-range type computer, system, to a AS400, and to implementing a Novell network and file servers, and you know, the client-server era. And then later in the 90s, the mid to late 90s to up through today, we have the web and the internet. And now over the last several years, we've had the growth of mobile and wireless. Now, all these other areas are still relevant, some more than others. You know, that we still have our desktops and our laptops, and we still have the web and internet. We use it all the day, every day. But you know, you bring mobility to this, and it creates a whole new dimension. You know, I think of the mobility impact just on myself, on a personal level. I have, you know, my iPhone and iPad. I have a MacBook Air, and then I have an iMac desktop, and that's what I run my business with. Is all those devices. You know, I might be working on my desktop, and then quickly, you know, have all my files synced, and you know, automatically to my laptop when I'm on the road on an airplane, need to work on a document. But you know, if I need to read something on the plane, I don't pull my laptop out typically. I'll read it on my iPad. And if I'm standing in line somewhere, you know, I can, like for a movie theater or a restaurant or whatever it is, in some government line waiting to get some forms processed or whatever, you know, I'm catching up on my email and doing my reading on my mobile device. You know, mobility's really impacted our world. I know just in the area of books, I get a lot more reading done because I have my books with me wherever I go. I'm always on top of email. I can answer email wherever I'm at, when and wherever I'm at, except it shouldn't be during a meeting. But you know, so mobile and wireless have had a significant impact on business, and that impact is impacting governance, risk management, and compliance now. The mobile and wireless world is entering GRC and making GRC more efficient, more effective, and more agile to the business. It allows better decision support, that we can get information out to people, communicate wherever and whenever they're at. It provides greater synchronization and communication capabilities across the business. At the end of the day, GRC technology is about getting the right people, the right access to the right information at the right time. GRC technology enables that. The mobile technology for GRC enables that because, you know, people don't have to be at their desk anymore. We can push that policy out to them wherever they're at. We can push that assessment out and have them complete it. They don't have to carry and lug around a laptop. They can use the flexibility that a tablet device gives them to conduct those assessments. So the benefits of mobile GRC is that we have increased productivity, that we can get people the information they need for risk and compliance assessments and policies and investigations and things wherever they're at on a flexible platform. It improves information gathering. You think about doing audits and assessments on tablet devices. You have the ability to capture evidence through the integrated cameras in these devices. Today, if you wanted to capture evidence, before, if you don't use mobility for GRC, you have to carry a separate digital camera, and then you have to sync it to your computer, and you have to find which pictures you wanted to attach to the evidence and upload and attach them. You don't need to do that anymore with mobile devices. I can use the camera on my iPad and a mobile GRC app, be able to take a picture of the evidence or the non-compliance situation, the investigation, what we found, or the audit, what we found, and be able to capture that right into the application itself without any type of messing with files and imports and things, and capture that evidence. Mobile GRC provides great information gathering abilities for the organization. You think about the value of just the flexibility a tablet gives you. If I'm doing a store audit or a warehouse audit or a vendor supplier audit, you know, and I'm going through certain parts of the organization, I see something, I need to find some place to sit down where I can type on my laptop. Maybe I have to sit on the floor and do it, or find a desk somewhere, enter that information. No longer the tablet device. The tablet device is easy and comfortable to go through the plant floor, the store location, whatever it might be, and just be able to enter the fields and things right there on your tablet device. And it saves time. It's more efficient. And you capture the information you've gathered right there instead of, you know, missing something because you had to spend 5 minutes looking for a desk to sit down to capture the thoughts and findings that you just recorded. It's much more efficient in its information gathering, its productivity, its processing. We were able to extend GRC apps to more individuals. Not everybody has a computer in the business. I could think of a large retail food chain that I worked with and interacted with, you know, and each of their stores in this name brand company, they have one computer, and only the manager and assistant manager can use that computer. And all the employees of the store don't have access to the computer. And so when policies get updated, they have to print out the policies at the store level and communicate them in company meetings, and it's very much a paper-based trail. Now they're looking at tablet devices to provide that GRC kiosk to deliver policies, to fill out forms, to be able to conduct training. You know, significant value and efficiency and mobility for policies in this retail environment. I can think of a, well, I'll go through some examples in just a bit. But, you know, the ability, we can extend GRC to more individuals. Myself, you know, you think about incident reporting. I was at a Green Bay Packers football game a year and a half ago, and there's some extremely obnoxious fans behind us. And any football game, people get rowdy, but these people were obsessively drunk and obsessively vulgar. And you had the fan assistance center, and it said if you see any type of fans getting out of control and things, and you know, text, you know, their seat location, and they'll be taken care of. You know, and I had my 3 teenage boys with me. This was very disturbing to my enjoyment of the game, so I texted their seat locations. And you know, the security guards came and stood by behind them for a bit and listened to their vulgarities and just how out of control they were, and they were ejected from the game. They had no idea that I was the one that reported on them. You know, it was mobility that allowed me to do that incident reporting. We're seeing even a lot of the hotline systems out there embrace this incident reporting by allowing text, so that if you see fraud or corruption or somebody stealing something in the retail store, you know, you can text somebody and people can get that information, take action right away. You don't have to get back to a phone to call somebody on the hotline. And in fact, you can even take a picture of a health and safety issue that you came across while you're in the manufacturing plant floor, and text that to the hotline and the issue reporting function to be able to capture that. You know, we can extend GRC apps to more individuals. We increase responsiveness. We capture the ability to capture information more effective with mobility, and it's easier to use. There's quite a range of different GRC uses of mobility that I see coming. And some are here today. One is dashboards, and you know, being able to provide those dashboards and those management applications to oversee the status of risk and compliance. One area that this definitely applies to is the area of board and entity management software. There's a software out there to manage your board communications, board papers, calendars, and even board voting for your board of directors. And several organizations are actually deploying tablet devices to their entire boards, because all their board portal and communications and voting is going onto the tablets. And there's whole, you know, apps out there just to manage board communications and reporting. The assessment piece, which is the heart of our discussion today, you know, the ability to use tablet devices to go out and do assessments, to effectively enter information as you walk around without having to find a spot to sit down and enter that information on your laptop, to use the camera to integrate evidence and information from those assessments. Policy communication, as in that retail store example I just mentioned. I can think of also a trucking organization, a logistics organization that's looking at the same thing to provide, you know, tablets to be able to deliver many things for the organization, but including the communication of policies and doing surveys and questionnaires and assessments on that. So policy communication and delivering training, issue reporting in that Green Bay Packer football example I mentioned, the hotline example I mentioned, you know, being able to report incidents and issues, and the ability to manage investigations, which is very similar to assessments. You know, I'm going out, there's some type of fraud or harassment or a health and safety incident happened. I got to manage the investigation. I have to collect evidence. I have to enter information. I can use the camera on the tablet device and be able to capture all that information. You know, mobility has a lot of different roles in GRC technology and applications. So mobility for GRC, we have a GRC system that's back in the context of our host today. That could be the CMO compliance GRC software platform. You know, in the past we had to have auditors and assessors go out and fill out information on laptops and submit that information. Now we have the flexibility that I've made the argument for of a tablet device that can be flexible as you walk around the retail store, the vendor or supplier, and they might have locations scattered around the world that you might be visiting, to, you know, the manufacturing plant floor. And the flexibility that tablet device gives you to enter information all this information can then be synced back with the corporate and the enterprise GRC application that you've deployed. So several ideas and thoughts on different types of audits and assessments. I've already mentioned the retail environment, where you can use them for going out to the retail stores and for policies. That's one angle. But I can think back to an RFP I worked on this last year, in which this is a retail store that has 2,000 stores across the U.S., and they've got some over in the U.K. and some in South America. But they have to do very redundant, very straightforward store audits. So they've got 10 store auditors in the U.S. They've got 2 over in Europe, and I think 1 in South America. And they do very routine store audits that goes through and does inventory audits, financial control audits, safety audits, all within a standard audit process. And one of their big requirements was looking for an assessment platform that supports tablet devices, because when they go out, they don't want to have to find desk space in these retail stores and things. This is not as efficient. They want a tablet device so that they can walk around and enter information and not have to try to find places to sit down and enter all that information. And they wanted a tablet device so that they can use the camera to capture evidence of non-compliance situation, audit findings, and things like that. That's the retail environment. A hospitality RFP I worked on this last year includes a large resort chain with mini resorts, and they have different buildings within the resorts and different units within those buildings. They want to be able to model all that in their GRC application, but then push out assessments to the mobile devices so that their auditors, their assessors can go out and do health and safety inspections of the different units and buildings to make sure they have the right carbon dioxide detectors and fire equipment and things like that. And we've just found tablet devices to be much more effective and efficient in delivering those assessments. Same thing in mining, oil and gas, the ability to do health and safety and environmental audits and assessments. Food and beverage, being able to do similar assessments across your food and beverage companies and health and safety inspections, other audits and assessments. The value of using mobility for GRC is significant. But one thing, as I wrap up my end of the presentation here, to consider is that not all mobility is created equal. There's a lot of vendors that advertise they have GRC mobility, but you need to look under the hood and find out what do they mean by that. A lot of vendors consider that they have mobile GRC platforms because they can support a mobile web browser, that Safari on the iPhone or on the iPad or Chrome on the Android tablet, that their application runs within a mobile browser. That's nice, and that might get you some flexibility, but to me that's not good enough. So when you look at mobile GRC solutions, some of the things you want to consider is what devices are supported. Is it Android? Is it BlackBerry? Is it Apple, iPad, iPhone? All the above. Is it a mobile browser type capability where I need some type of connectivity and mobile access that might not have been designed and built as efficiently as it could? Or is it a true app, something that's installed on the device? Now, a true app versus a mobile browser type capability can bring you the difference between online and offline capabilities. In that retail store example that I mentioned with the 10 U.S. auditors going through 2,000 U.S. retail stores every year, offline capabilities was significant for them. You go to any mall, you might not have an internet Wi-Fi connection. You might not know who, what type of cellular coverage you have. I can think of a mall in the Chicago area, an hour from my house, that my wife loves to visit. And when I go there, I get frustrated because I use AT&T, and in half the stores, it doesn't work. AT&T does not have good reception in that mall. But if I have my iPad, which has Verizon on it, I get great access. So you can't depend on cellular capabilities. So you need some type of offline capabilities, and a well-designed app instead of a mobile browser can give you that offline capabilities to conduct these assessments when you don't have connectivity, and be able to control that and sync that up. And you should be able to control the information sync. At a mobile GRC should make GRC processes more responsive and agile, that we can get information. People can report issues, assessments and audits can be conducted more quickly. As business changes, we can push them out to individuals. It should be more efficient. There should be less time spent on it. That they should be easy to capture information and evidence. That we can use the integrated camera. We don't have to go through all these steps to upload and attach pictures that we've captured through digital cameras. It's more efficient on resources and time to capture information. And it should be just at the end of the day be more effective and help us meeting our regulatory requirements. So those are my thoughts on the use of mobility for GRC, and particularly focusing a little bit on the assessment and audit piece. Why don't we hear from our hosts now on how they're approaching mobile GRC within their platform and technology that they deliver.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much, Michael. That was very evocative and indeed informative, so thank you very much. We'll just jump onto my screen. Okay, thank you. So thank you for that introduction, Michael. And now we're just going to run through our solution in a little bit of detail to show you how we can resolve those governance, risk and compliance issues that Michael highlighted in his presentation. So a bit of background on us. I won't go into too much detail here, but you can see we are a global provider of GRC solutions, focusing on a few sectors there, and we have been selected as a leading provider of governance, risk and compliance software with a particular focus on our mobile solution. So we do offer off-the-shelf products and solutions. The solution set that's relevant today is the audit and assessment solution, the risk management solution, the compliance management solution, which tracks laws and regulations around the world. We provide in conjunction with our partners, Deloitte and DLA Piper, who provide that legal content. I think Michael mentioned they had a bank that mapped out their compliance requirements and found 81,000 requirements just affecting their bank. So we try and simplify that process by providing obligation libraries of exactly that content that we then update and maintain on behalf of our clients. Incidents and events, action issue tracking, document management, training and competence, all off-the-shelf solutions that we offer our clients. You can see the product focus there today, obviously, looking at the mobile interfaces to solve these problems. So a number of clients there in a variety of sectors. I know we have some guests today representing all those sectors. Some of you I know are even actually clients, so thank you for joining as clients on this webinar today. Application versatility, we can see as it is so highly configurable, it can be used in a variety of different ways depending on the particular GRC problems our client faces. This is both in the mobile sense as well as from a management system perspective. So we can see the solution. This is a typical solution that we deploy, our core modules as well as our training solution in this case. And we'll see exactly how we deal with each of those elements as we move through the presentation. So the outcomes are all about being highly configurable, producing powerful reports and dashboards, and being simple to use and implement. So jumping into the solution, having a look at the mobile audit and assessment piece, which is really the topic of today. So focusing on that particular module, we can see how there's the ability to plan audit and assessment centrally from a central event register. We can view that on a daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly basis, or even by auditee or entity that we are assessing. We then have the ability to perform audits electronically and complete those working papers, either through a web-based interface or on a tablet, laptop, or even on the mobile interfaces. So in the field on iPads, iPhones, iPods, PDAs. And as Michael mentioned, it's very important, we believe at least, to have this application available offline on your mobile device so you can actually access it in the field without connectivity. There's a lot of solutions out there that simply allow access to a website or a web page through a mobile device. However, obviously, if you're underground or if you're out of an area where there's no connectivity, all of a sudden you'll lose all of the hard work that you've been entering for your audit results. We can then be in the field. We can, on our iPad, we can enter the details of the audit. We can add findings, actions. We can add details, whether it's some drop-down lists or checkboxes or open-ended sort of text fields. We can enter all our text electronically through the mobile device. You can even take photos, view policies and procedures in the field. So you can really, there's no limit to the way that you configure your particular audit and assessment forms or tools to be used in the field. We can also access other information offline in the field, such as training and competence information. We can induct contractors electronically on iPads in the field. We can view certificates as well in the field. So very powerful in what the solution allows you to do in the field. And then when the information is synchronized back to the management system, reports can automatically be produced detailing the results of an audit or an assessment that's been done, whether it's a contractor pre-qualification or a financial assessment or a Sarbanes-Oxley audit. They can all be produced with a variety of different reports highlighting exactly exactly what you need to see. In this case here, we've got a Sarbanes-Oxley audit. We can see it broken down element by element, and we can see the level of compliance across the organization, which we can drill down to see even further information behind that if we need to. So you can see here on a month-by-month basis exactly where we've got issues and gaps. And we can then view across the organization exactly the sites or areas or entities that are not in compliance. We can drill down to further details from the dashboards. There's also a variety of build your own dashboards as well. So there's custom dashboards here that you can build up depending upon what you want to analyze. There's also divisional type dashboards you can break down by entity as well, and slice and dice that information in any way you want to get the reporting you need. So that's really a high-level overview of the application. As we said, it does run on a whole variety of devices in the field to allow that those mobile assessments, whether it's on the Apple operating system, on the Windows mobile tablet operating system, or even PDF and Excel sheets. So you can actually have PDF smart forms to do your audits or assessments on, which have a button on the bottom saying, submit here by email, which will then email the PDF back into the system when you've completed the audit or assessment and update the system accordingly. A similar concept with Excel sheets, so you can actually perform the audits or assessments in Excel sheets as well. So that's really the end of the formal side of the presentation now. So I'd just like to, first of all, thank you all for coming again and open it up to question and answers, which we can run through the webinar control panel. And you can, of course, find more information and contact us through www.cmocompliance.com.